I love that. It's almost like there was a plan. Yeah. All right, I've got my watch. I've got my talk. I've got my GPS. Okay, so this title, I'm very glad to be here, by the way. I love giving these talks. This title, I admit, might be viewed as a little goofy. Guidance or GPS, but I'm kind of a technical person. I love gadgets. You know what? My sister's laughing. You know how when you feel depressed you go shopping? Who here does that? Okay, yes. Let's be honest. Let's be open. When I feel depressed, when something goes wrong, I don't go buy clothes. I don't go buy shoes. I go to Fry's or I go to Best Buy because I just love gadgets, and so I like to talk about them. So I got captivated today with the idea of GPS. Here's another bit of self-disclosure. Do you know how we all have great books inside us, except all we have is a title? How many people have written a book, but all we have is a title? Yeah, I'm still waiting for the book. But I have this great idea for a book. It's called GPS Does Not Get You to Heaven. And I just need to kind of figure out what comes in the, pages. But that is my title. So the title for today is Guidance or GPS. And I became captivated with the idea of GPS as a means of finding direction. And Reverend Cindy hit on it when she was talking to the kids. I mean, what does GPS do for us? It gets us from where we are to a place we want to go, but where we've never been. We don't need it to go to where we're going, that we've been to before. It gets us to a place we've never been. So, kind of expanding the analogy, that might be a situation where we're faced with a choice. We have a life decision coming up, as we've all had, and we kind of don't know how to get from where we are to where we want to go. So I was just captivated with the idea of GPS. So let's just move with this for a minute. Just travel with me down this road. So we take the GPS, we plug in an address. We know where we are. We plug in the address and we hit start. And what happens? A voice tells us every turn we need to take. I've gotten in my car, another wonderful analogy for transition and movement, but that's a different talk. And I have pressed in an address, and I have no notion where I'm going. This thing could tell me something completely counterintuitive, but I do it anyway. If it says turn left, I turn left. If it says turn right, I turn right. It tells me when I've gotten there. It says stop, you are at your destination. How wonderful is that? I don't have to know anything. And it gets better. The other great thing about GPS, and we can again analogize this to the voice of spirit. The other great thing about GPS is we never get lost. Have you noticed that with GPS? Let's pretend you're going along, and it says turn left, and you turn right. Does the GPS start laughing and say, you are so lost. I am turning off. No, it doesn't. You never get lost. As long as you have a signal, it is always there. What it does, and I know it goes, rerouting, rerouting. And how often does the voice of spirit do that? You go down the wrong alley, rerouting. The guidance is always there, as long as we have the signal. You may take a wrong turn, but we always end up getting to our destination. Now, I often wish that the voice of spirit could be like that. It could be like an app or something. But it's not. I wish that it was that loud, that it was that clear, that I could just turn it on when I want to. But I can't. And it kind of makes me mad. I mean, I'll do things like I'll read the Bible. I cannot imagine a text where there are more examples of loud messages from God. I mean, I'm sitting here waiting for the small, still voice. Why don't I get a burning bush? Like Moses. Moses had and even then he didn't believe it. It was like, whoa, what is that? Take off your sandals, you're on holy ground. I'm on holy ground, I'm almost on fire. So Moses has a burning bush. Joseph had an angel appear to him 4 times. How many people have had an angel appear to them once? Okay, excellent, Linda, good, okay. But we all hear voices, but this is an example of how God has sent big messages. If you read the Gospels and the New Testament, we counted, there are no fewer than 17 examples of God sending messengers, of God sending angels. Mary had the angel Gabriel show up to tell her she was going to have a child. Please, these are big events. Why can't this happen to us? We're just looking for guidance, same as they were. They were just standing around, fat, dumb, and happy, and there's the angel Gabriel. Like, oh my God. These appearances are not limited to the Christian tradition. If you read the Bhagavad Gita, we had Arjuna, who had the deity Krishna as his charioteer, talking to him on a daily basis. We had Muhammad, hearing the voice of God, getting the message out in the desert for days and days. These things just don't happen now. Not only did God send messengers, if we want to feel even worse about what we're not getting, he also sent big signs. The Red Sea parted. Elijah, in the battle he had with the prophets of Baal in Kings, not only he got, if you've read the story, it's a great story, he gets all these prophets of Baal and they're trying to decide who is the better God. So the prophets of Baal get up and they writhe and they create snakes and they drum and they do whatever, and God never answers. And so Elijah says, well, he must be meditating. He must be awake. And so what Elijah does then, in order to prove his God is better, he sets up a wood pile, he sets up a sacrifice, he takes water, dumps it on the wood 3 times so it won't light, and then he looks up, now's the time, and God sends this huge fire down, lights up the wood, proving that God is better. And everyone goes, oh my God, your God must be better, your God is all powerful. And so to seal the deal, Elijah on his own kills them all. So we know whose God is better. At least in that story. Okay, now, I'm willing to believe that some of these stories might be examples. They might be messages. They might not be actually true. They might be there just to teach us lessons. They're there to provide guidance and lessons for us. But having said that, I don't discount the possibility of revelation even today. And actually, this is a notion that theologians argue about, but I've heard it said that one of the major problems with the Bible is that somebody put a back cover on it. Which is actually kind of a cool notion. Because revelation can still happen to us. I mean, we get the voice of guidance, we may get inspiration. Kristen is talking about inspiration coming to her in a dream. But typically, we do not get burning bushes, pillars of cloud, pillars of fire. We typically don't get things as dramatic as that, even though we still are as much in need of guidance or inspiration or the voice of Spirit talking to us as those folks back then. And I thought about that. I thought, okay, why is it that those folks get big signs from God and we get encouraged to listen to the small, still voice within? And I thought, what's the difference? And I thought, well, reading the Old Testament, the task of those prophets was to obey. You got the message of God, and your job was to obey. Well, our job is not so much to obey. Our job is to discern the inner wisdom, to hear the voice of God speaking to us, and to put it into practice. To be feet to belief. So it's a bit different. So we're not lucky enough to get big signs, because that's kind of short-circuiting the process. Our job is to listen and to discern, and then using our own free will, because we are spiritual beings having a very human experience, to put those principles into action. So how do we do that? Starting with the basics, we believe that we are the divine in expression. We believe that God is all there is, and that our very essence, we always have access to the connection that is spirit, because it is at our core. The image I get is the earth, the globe. You know, at the very core, there is burning, molten lava. I've now told you everything I know about geology. But that is the same with us. At our very essence, We are of God. It animates us. It inspires us. As Cindy read in the Daily Word, it is the environment in which we live and move and have our being. You know, sometimes when we don't realize the extent to which we are surrounded by the divine. I think of it as God soup. That's really an image I have. Because as I walk through the world, I'm walking through air. It is coming up against me. I am moving through it. If we had the right instrumentation, we could see the eddies and the currents that are created as you move through this world. Well, if we believe that God is all there is, we are moving in a constant, rich environment of the divine. It envelops us. It supports us. It animates us in every cell of our being. And that's who we are. And so, in a sense, there is no place, in every sense, there is no place that God is not. It is indeed the essence in which we live and move and have our being. So having said that, if we open ourselves to that experience, if we are aware that every opportunity is an opportunity for a message from the divine, it surrounds us everywhere we look. I know that I see Jeannie here. I know that Cheryl and Jeannie have been giving a class, one of the topics of which is intuition. I haven't been able to make the class, but I'm guessing this is what they're talking about, at least in part. Help me out here, Jeannie.
Yes, we are. In fact, I'm sitting here thinking, I want to tell everybody about the class. That's the very thing. Exactly, discerning and
yeah.
There is a burning bush. It may just be a little small, like something in your yard. But
yeah, okay, well good, that's exactly it. There may be a burning bush. It may be something you have to put out, but get the message before you do it. You open yourself up. The secret is to open yourself up to Spirit's guidance wherever it is. As Jesus taught in the Sermon on the Mount, ask and it will be given to you. Search and you will find. Knock and the door will be opened for you. For everyone who asks receives, everyone who searches finds, and for everyone who knocks, the door will be open. So what is required of us? Ask, search, knock. We have to be open to it. We have to be willing to extend, to receive the voice of guidance. There is a great visual I like for this, and I should have it for you, but I don't. Actually, it's on my thumb drive. But who here has seen the fresco on the Sistine Chapel called The Creation of Man by Michelangelo? I encourage you to see it. Okay, great. Some people have. What we have is we have two figures. One is God and one is Adam. And God is supported by angels, and he is straining toward Adam. He is leading out. You can see the energy of God as he reaches out and extends toward man. His finger is out. The angels have this expression on their faces like, whoa, this better work. And God is out there just extended. And then we have Adam. Adam is on the other side. Adam is lounging away from God. He's reclining. And he's got his hand out. He looks just about as bored as one can be. And he's got his finger, which I would not be in the presence of God. I don't know about you. But he's got his finger down. There is a small space between the finger of God and the finger of Adam. They do not connect. And I've heard art critics say, well, it's supposed to create tension because we're just waiting for God to close the gap. I suggest we are not waiting for God to close the gap. We are waiting for Adam to close the gap. Adam's finger is down. All he has to do to get the energy of God, the connection from God, the Spirit of God, is raise his finger. Look at the picture. Raise his finger. And wham, there he will be. All the love, the connection, the Spirit will shoot into him. He doesn't look interested, but that's all he has to do. That's all we have to do. We don't have to give up our jobs. We don't have to take the veil. We have to take a step to create that connection. We have to lift our finger. We have to ask, search, knock, to open ourselves up to the messages and the wisdom that Spirit is trying to give us every day. And so when we are open to that, how do we become aware of these messages? Every opportunity, every encounter is an opportunity for growth, for a message from God. So let's look at it that way. Okay, let's pretend in life there are no coincidences. How many people believe there are no coincidences? I do. Okay, so why is this irritating person in my office? Is it to cause me to stroke out? Probably not. It's to teach me patience, to teach me compassion, to teach me love. Why am I sitting in traffic when I need to be somewhere else? Well, let's take a breath and think about this. Maybe it's to teach me patience, equanimity, to breathe, to look around, to think. Life's lessons are everywhere we look if we are open to it. If we just ask ourselves, show me the good. Show me the good. You will always find it. I guarantee it in any situation, even if we don't know what the good is, even if we can't look over that horizon. God is waiting to show us the good. What is it Kamal? Remember Kamal, our wonderful speaker from last week, said? Inspiration, dreams, every experience in life is an opportunity for God's message. I told a story in one of my earlier talks about my son Nick, who is just a joy. I have so many Nick stories, but I only have 20 minutes, so I'm going to tell you this one. When I come home from work, I walk in the house and Nick always says, "What you doing here?" He does. He says, "What you doing here?" And I always say, "Well, I live here." And it's our little ritual. But then I started thinking, opening myself up to this lesson, how many of us are lucky enough to have somebody every day look at them and say, "What you doing here?" I mean, seriously, think about it. What am I doing here? And I just love it. I mean, it's just, if you use something like that as a gift, and so I think about it, what am I doing here? What have I done today? These guys are laughing because they know Nick, but he does. So open yourselves up to the experiences of life, because divine guidance is there. Now, having said that, we also ask for direct guidance. We also ask for help with difficult decisions. And this is where we kind of turn on our internal GPS. We intentionally call on the connection we have with God to help us with a decision that we cannot make, that we just don't know how to get from here to there. Unity co-founders Charles and Myrtle Fillmore called it sitting in the capital S silence. We meditate, we breathe, and we wait for the guidance that comes when we are open to receive it. Now, Charles Fillmore, and this was interesting to me, he taught that guidance does not always come when you are sitting in the silence. But what happens is, as you employ that as a practice, it creates an environment in which you reconnect. It creates the space in which you can hear the voice of guidance when you need it throughout your day. You are refreshed and renewed and just revived just by making that a daily spiritual practice. How many of you have found solutions to problems in that way? By sitting in the silence, by waiting for choices to come to you, by finding clarity about what it is you want. Now maybe this is why God doesn't send us signs. Because sending us a sign is the same as somebody else making the choice for you. It's an easy out. And I'm pointing the finger at myself. I did this 2 weeks ago because I'm looking at making some major life changes, so I'm like, okay, God, send me a sign. If this happens, I should do it. If this doesn't happen, I shouldn't. Okay, guess what happened? He sent me a sign, then the sign fell through. Okay, so what does this do for me? It brings me back to the first lesson. I'm not here for signs. I'm not here for the easy out. I'm here to discern and go through the process of transformation that leads me to clarity. So we often ask ourselves these tough questions. Should I get a new job? Is this marriage over? Should this marriage start? Should I move to a new city? These are tough questions, and sometimes we just cannot see over the horizon. So how do we solve these questions? How do we make these huge decisions? Well, if you're like the rest of us, you employ the profound spiritual practice of asking all your friends. Or, failing that, you can take a Facebook test. My personal favorite. I'm not going to ask for a show of hands on how many people have taken Facebook tests. Okay. But those don't work, because all you do when you ask your friends is you get a summary of what your friends think. That is not a transformational process. That is not calling on your own inner wisdom to solve these problems. Asking for a sign is not the way out. We are avoiding the hard questions. Well, so what do? We first look to our hearts. We look at what we desire, because our hearts are wonderful indicators of what brings us joy. Sometimes I heard it said that in order to find out what kind of career you like or you should pick, you should ask yourself what you liked doing when you were 10. How many people remember what they liked doing when they were 10? Seriously, a few. Well, it's a good indicator, because back then we had the freedom to do what we love to do. So we listen to our hearts. And we say, I would love to do X. But the problem is, then we get into practicalities. I would love to change my life in a radical way. I would frankly love to quit my job and go down to the city of Atlanta and smile at everyone I meet. I probably would do more good if I did that. But I'd also be divorced, and I'd have no kids. So we have to figure in the practicalities of our lives. And this is where sitting in the silence helps us. Because the voice of Spirit knows that sometimes we can't just drop everything and go and run off and do what we want. But it doesn't mean that there is not a solution. So we sit and we breathe. We express gratitude because we know the answer is coming. We express gratitude before we even know what it is, because that is how we operate. Because we are certain that if we engage in the process, we will find a clarity that we don't have going in. And so we can be confident and we can be grateful that that clarity is coming. Haven't you just had a process where you're facing a serious choice? This has been true for me over the past couple of weeks. When you sit and you breathe, you pray for guidance, you thank God because you know the answer is coming, and over time, over this process, over this transformation, a clarity just arises. A contentment arises. A certainty arises. Do you know what I'm talking about? I'm sure you do, because this is the way decisions get made. That is the process of listening to your inner wisdom. Sometimes it comes in a flash, but more often it just comes in sitting and listening to the connection, the voice that you always have inside. Sometimes you have to step away. Sometimes you have to just let it work. Our minds are wonderful things. There was a mathematician called, and I love this guy, called Henri Poincaré. I have now totally massacred the man's name. But he was a 19th century mathematician, and he was convinced that our minds continue to work on a problem even after we stop focusing on it. And so he would work on a math problem, then he would go away and do something else, and then he would come back and the answer would be there. This is why we're told to sleep on things. Because haven't you noticed when you hyper-focus on something and you've got to get a decision in the next 10 minutes, it's not going to come. The only thing that's going to come in the next 10 minutes is stress. So we step away from the problem, we give it some time. We are confident that Spirit is going to continue to work to give us the answer. The other thing that sitting in the silence, breathing, and being grateful does is it opens up our hearts to put us in the right frame of mind to hear guidance. Richard Rohr teaches that if we preach love to loving people, they become more loving. And you probably know this in your own experience. If you preach love to people who are gripped with fear or anger or hatred, it's like you're speaking a different language. La 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 la. They just don't hear it. You have to be in a loving state. You have to be in an open state to hear these messages. That's why when we meditate here, and in any venue, we take time to breathe. We take time to recenter. We take time to open our hearts. Because that is the only way. Chris is getting a message. I love it. That is the only way that we are going to hear the voice of love and the voice of compassion that is coming from us. How many people have tried to sit down and meditate when they're angry or irritated or rushed or stressed? How is that working for you? It does not. You have to take that time to open your heart to be a channel to what is being sent to you. It's a communication. Remember how in my talk on prayer, I talked about how prayer is a communication? It is. You have a sender, you have a receiver. You have to be in the same mode as the message you are getting. You have to be sitting with an expectancy of love and awareness and gratitude for these messages to come in. The voice of Spirit is always available. We don't always know when we're going to hear it. We don't always know when we're going to experience it. But our challenge is to approach life in a way that we know it's coming. Because it is. Because God is at our very essence. There's no options. None of us are divorced from the voice of God. We may be unaware of it. We may be too busy to listen to it. But if we slow down and we try, we just lift that finger, that connection is made. We may make a decision which is not correct for us, but God also reroutes. He doesn't abandon you. You continue to get guidance, but that's for another talk. We are inseparable from the voice of Spirit. All we have to do is remain open to receive it. Let's take these thoughts into meditation.